gosh. Oh, it's playing again. No. There's a delay. Wow. Oh, it's like the first time since ages since I'm hosting or doing my own live stream again. So I'm a bit confused. And something else happened right before like I started going live. I had to reopen my Firefox because I didn't allow it to actually record my screen. So I had to close everything and I had everything prepared for this live stream. So now I have to just open the links again. How is everybody doing? Let me just organize myself because I'm completely out right now. This is like the first time since ages since I'm doing this again. So it's a bit messy. And I'm like super close on the screen, which is also a bit weird. But I guess we will figure it out. You can just minimize my face if you don't mind. Awesome. Yeah, cool. Thank you for joining me here. I'm just gonna open YouTube and see like how it's all, I don't know, going. Like I'm doing this through StreamYard and I'm so clumsy with it right now. I feel very, very clumsy. So awesome. Okay, you can see me. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Carl. Hi. Thank you for joining. Hi, Kunal. Thank you for joining. I had your video open because I want to show you a video as well. So I'm just going to open like some of the links that I wanted to share again. And yeah, how is everybody doing? Happy New Year. Yes. Hi. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Vishal. Sorry if I don't pronounce your name right. Yes, I'm leaving Sivo. Last week was my last day, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. If you have any questions, obviously not. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but like a little bit, since I guess people are curious of what I'm doing and why I'm leaving Sivo, and we can talk a little bit about that. Happy New Year. How do you pronounce your name? Anshuman? I'm sorry. Hi, Alistair. Thank you for joining. You must be busy. So thank you for taking the time. It's really great to see you. Yeah. I just want to open some of the links that I wanted to show you because I had like so much prepared and I was so excited to show you everything that I want to talk about. And then I had to close everything. It's like the thing is, I'm completely new to Mac and I have a MacBook since like a month, nearly 2 months, and I still don't know really how to use it. It's really embarrassing. Like you wouldn't believe me what happened to me on the plane. So I was visiting my family over the holidays and there was lots of turbulences in one of the planes that I had to fly in. And I hate flying. So I was in one of those planes and it said everything has to be turned off because of the turbulences. Everything has to be turned off during landing. And I had no idea how to turn my iPhone off because I never used an iPhone. So I was sitting there and I was getting super desperate. I'm like, how do you turn this thing off? Because if you press the off button, it just turns Siri on. So it was like only talking to Siri and it wouldn't turn off. And I was getting crazy. So I was sitting in the middle. So I asked the people next to me and they didn't know how to turn it off. So there were 3 people trying to turn off an iPhone, which was hilarious. You wouldn't how many people do you need to turn off an iPhone? Sorry, that's like a really random story that I thought I'm just going to share. So in the end, we managed to turn it off. You have to press the off button and the volume button at the same time, and then it turns off. Duh, if you know that. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle. Okay, let me read the comments. That must be fun. Yeah, a MacBook can be a little confusing in the start, but once you get the hang of it, you don't want to look back to anything else. I don't know about that. No, I used to, it's great. Like, I think it's great for lots of different things. You just have everything working, especially like if you're streaming, if you're doing these kind of things. I used to do that on Ubuntu and it was a pain. It was always something that wouldn't work or something that wouldn't connect. And that's really frustrating when you just want to, you just want to go record yourself or talking or do a video, a demo or something. And everything is really, I don't know, especially the audio, the sound and stuff. It just doesn't seem to be working a lot of times. So it's nice to use a machine that works. can students in high school do DevOps? Oh, I'm gonna get to those great questions in a second. Let me open some stuff. I'm still like behind. If you just joined, I had everything prepared and I want to share my screen. And then I had to close Firefox because you have to, like with MacBook, you have to give the application individual permission to record your screen and stuff. Safety, I don't know, privacy stuff. So yeah, I'm still figuring things out. So you have to bear with me a second. But there was a question about time management. And let me share my screen because I struggle with time management a lot. So I want to talk about that first before I go to the other questions, because actually, pitch me your productivity system. So here, let's share my screen. Let's figure out how to share my screen. Hopefully it works now. Share screen. Usually you do that before you go live, but then I was like, I had time pressure, so I didn't do that. Share screen. Share screen. Share screen. Allow. Okay, you can see my screen, I hope. I think so. Awesome. Okay, so cool. Hi, everybody. So there was a question early in the chat about productivity, time management advice. And I'm sometimes really bad with time management. What I do is I sometimes spend too long on a task because either I spend time researching about what I'm supposed to do, like not researching what about I'm supposed to do, but I mean, I'm pretty new to a lot of these technologies, right? So if you give me a task or there's something I have to do, I sometimes end up just going through all kinds of articles and start reading books about it and so on. So that's one of my issues. And the other issue is that I want to make things perfect. And then I sometimes take a lot of time to make sure that that's the case from my perspective. And that's kind of time consuming. And also with some things, I'm a master procrastinator. Like with my university work, with my assignments, I procrastinate way too much. So I asked here on my Twitter if somebody, oops, that's the wrong one. Does that work? Okay. If somebody has any ideas or suggestions on how they manage their time. And I think with time management, it's one of those things that, I can't just tell you how I do it. Like, you have to make it work for yourself. Like, I haven't found out yet what really works for me. I have times where I'm super concentrated and I can just get lots of work done throughout several weeks. And then I have times where I'm just hardly getting myself motivated to do extra work. Like with these live streams, I scheduled so many, and it's just like, it was kind of overwhelming to do them in addition to my day job, to my day-to-day job work. And I'm going to get to that in a second, which is kind of like the bridge to another topic right now. But so that's why I kind of, I'm curious what other people do, what works for other people. There was one, let me see if I can find it here, this one. This person is basically, I think that's really cool, is dividing their time in 1 hour blocks. And after each hour, they have like a timer, and they record after each hour what they have done. So they hold themselves accountable. And I think holding yourselves accountable is such a valuable thing that you can do. So that's my 2 cents to time management. It's something that you have to figure out for yourself. There's this really good book that I read once called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I can share the link later in the description. And he's talking about how to it's mainly about how do you figure out like time chunks in your day where you can really like just focus, where you are not distracted, where your phone is in the other room, and where you just get work done, and how you can structure your day around those deep work sessions, if that makes sense. So that's a nice book to read. But again, it's just like, it's something that worked for him, and he's sharing it in this book, and it might not work for everybody. Like if you do a lot of work that involves being online and on Twitter and communicating with people, then you can't really do that much, right? Versus if you're an academic and you just have to do research and you really have to be focused, right? That's a bit different. Deep Work is one of the best books I've ever read. Thank you for sharing. CK, that's like a rapper name. Thank you, Jose. Thank you for joining. I'm just reading through the comments. I think the thing, procrastination is probably one of the main things. Like if you if you master not to procrastinate, I think that's like one of the most valuable skills in today's time. Like if you actually master to get work done, and that happens a lot of times also with remote work, that there are people who really get the job done, and then there are other people who struggle with that. And I think that's like one of those number one skills of like, can you stay focused over long periods of time? I think I would prioritize that more if people are able to do that over other skills. Just my 2 cents on that. Okay, what else? Can students in high school do DevOps? I think there's nothing you can't do. No, that sounds very cheesy. So it really depends. So, I mean, from my experience, and just to provide a bit background information, I started after my high school, I started a degree in information systems, and information systems is kind of a mixture between computer science and business administration, business management. So you have both classes in like finance and marketing and all the business kind of stuff. And then you also have Java development and web development and all those kind of more computer science focused classes, but it's really like kind of applied to, really hands-on. It's like not theoretical, like you don't do theoretical computer science. And within that degree, we didn't do anything that I would necessarily call DevOps. And right now I'm doing an online computer science degree, which is kind of part-time. And we also don't do anything that's related to DevOps. Like I never really had to do anything that I would do in my day-to-day job since I'm in the space. So I think that's a huge shortcoming for universities. And I think if that's something, like if you're a university student and you start teaching yourself all those practical skills of like, okay, once you develop a project, that's amazing. How do you then manage it? Like, how do you manage that entire project's life cycle, right? Like, for example, my degree, we have to develop like Python apps and stuff like that, but it's basically just the code on GitHub and then you're done with it, versus actually spending time of like, okay, let's create a pipeline to manage it going forward, or let's deploy it, right? You don't really learn about it. Like we have never talked in my degree in 4 years, like I'm in my 5th year right now. We have never talked about deployment strategies, nothing. That's something that I learned in my first job at CodeFresh. That's like the first time when I entered this space that I actually learned about different deployment strategies. Hey, thank you for joining. Hope you enjoy your holidays too. Thank you for sharing. Hi, everybody who joined, who listened in. Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to share them. I just wanted to kind of talk about why I'm leaving Sivo, and what's next for me and what's next for 100 Days of Kubernetes. That's kind of the main theme of this live stream, if you will. And we kind of see, we'll see how it goes. Let me share my screen again. So, for those who are new to my channel, I joined the DevOps space about a year ago after working for several years in the blockchain space. And so when I got started, I started doing these notes, these 100 Days of Kubernetes notes, because I thought, okay, I have to learn for my job Kubernetes. Let's just do the best out of it and kind of make it as a challenge. And it started actually with this DevOps diary here, which is on my Notion page, Notion table. And so there are lots and lots of different links, but that's ultimately where it started. It started here of me just doing really day one by one by one. And then I realized people don't really see it here, right? Like you won't necessarily find this link. And it's, since I'm not paying for Notion, it's not on. I think that has nothing to do with it. But I don't think it's like hugely indexed anywhere. Like I wouldn't think people would find these links. So after this, like after I started doing this, and as you see, like I'm kind of at day 44, but that's like a different story. So I put all of those notes into this open source kind of book documentation style thing. And that is hosted on GitHub. So everything that I put in here is hosted in this GitHub repository. And as you can see, lots of people already started to contribute. And those are like different kinds of changes, from adding an entire page to editing some of my writing, since I'm not a native speaker, so that's always really helpful. And this is a book that's with MD book. It's like with Rust, so you need to install Rust on your computer, and it's pretty straightforward, I think, and then you can contribute to it. So just clone it, and then you can contribute to it and submit a pull request. And yeah, so I put everything in here, and then I realized, oh, I'm not really maintaining it. And so that's one of the things that I want to change this year. I want to get started to maintaining this more and making it more visible within the community. I think lots of community members don't know that this exists. And similarly, I started at the beginning of my learning journey, I started just, with the theory of what is Kubernetes, what is the architecture, what are pods, what is a service, like really just me going through all those different kinds of resources and discovering of what's going on. And now thinking back of how I approach my learning, I wouldn't necessarily tell others to follow the same journey, like the exact same learning path. Like, yes, some of the first pages, I would suggest people to start with those topics, but then ultimately I wouldn't necessarily suggest people to do on day 13, learn about ingress, or to learn about what K9s is, right? Like these kind of things versus namespaces, they should be far earlier in the learning journey. So if you're wondering how to get started with Kubernetes, it really depends. And I'm going to restructure this page completely to reflect what I think I would suggest people to get started with. And I would love for community members to contribute to it with their own experience, as well as if you're just getting started with Kubernetes, it would be so valuable to get your input and your feedback of what kind of resources are you looking at first, and what kind of topics within the cloud native ecosystem are you looking at first. If you're learning Kubernetes from scratch, what are you learning first? Those kind of information are really, really valuable, because ultimately this was just me getting started with Kubernetes. And it's likely that lots of other people get started with Kubernetes in quite different ways, and kind of bringing that knowledge together in one place would be very, very amazing. And that's one of my goals going forward. And as you can see, it's not completely 100 days. I want to change that as well, like by breaking up some of the topics and adding more tutorials. And hopefully it's going to be a more valuable resource then. Like, for example, I stopped putting the content here and started putting it directly onto my blog. Where's my blog? Onto my blog. So you have like some tutorials here, like this one, the latest one that I did. So they are living here right now, but I want to collect those kind of information in this open source book repository. So that's for what 100 days is kind of going to look like. I'm like planning to invest a lot more time into it and make this more of a thing for the community. I've also started thinking with some people to like start a mentoring group that's tailored at women and minority groups, and also just focus on career mentoring more versus technical mentoring. So those are kind of the things that are next for 100 days. There are some questions. Let me look at the chat again. What prior knowledge should one have before contributing to any open source project? That really depends on the open source project. When I got started with Kubernetes, CNCF projects, what I contributed to first was just documentation, or like mainly documentation of different projects, because ultimately that's what I was learning from. Those were the main resources that I was using. So lots of projects, they have starter resources. And let me open up the CNCF, the landscape maybe. CNCF landscape, and maybe Prometheus GitHub or something to show you that. So you have in those repositories, you have like with those issues, you can filter the issues, and a lot of the issues have like for starter tags, like easier things that you can work on. But it really depends ultimately on what you want to do, versus and where your interests are, versus that there are a specific set of skills required. I think open source is a lot about trial and error, and the community is there to give you feedback. So that's what I would say. But again, it really depends like on your skills and what you want to do. And sometimes I'm looking at repositories, I'm like, oh, I really want to contribute to them, but I don't yet have the skills. So I kind of try to teach myself that some more tools or skills are around for what I need to contribute ultimately to that repository. So that's another strategy. Like you can also, by looking at open source repositories, you can learn about what kind of technologies are needed, let's say, to work with those tools. And then it kind of gives you information of like where you have skill gaps and what you can learn to advance. That's how I would put it. I will publish later on a video where I talk more about that, on how I would figure out what kind of questions I'm using to figure out what I want to learn next, or what I have to learn next to advance my career. And so I'm sharing that in a blog post where I basically talk about how I approach these kind of questions of how do you get started with X, or how do you know what you should learn about X, and so on. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to publish the blog post later on today. So I would love to get your feedback if you have a look at that, and let me know if it's helpful for you. Can a person get a remote role if he/she is below 20 or below 18? I heard one get remote role only if they are 20 or older. That's a good question. No, with all answers, it really depends. I kind of have a non-traditional career path in the sense that I dropped out of my first degree. So I talked earlier in the stream about my different degrees. I can't remember in which relation. Oh, in relation to DevOps. And I dropped out of my first degree because I wanted to work and study at the same time. And my degree had mandatory attendance and didn't really allow for that kind of flexibility. So I dropped out of that first degree after 2 years. And it was very, very, very difficult to find a job without a degree, because I had like only a few internships worth of experience. So companies were looking at what can she do? What kind of certifications does she have, right? Like, especially when you're getting started, a degree or like any formal education, I would say, will provide you with more credibility, right? And ultimately, when somebody is employing you, they base a lot of trust in you. Like there's a lot of on stake for the hiring manager, for the person hiring you, for the person placing the trust in you, for the person who's taking ultimately the chances on you. So you having a degree minimizes the uncertainty for them. That's more like it. It doesn't show necessarily what you can do, because I've met lots of people, for instance, who have a degree and they don't know how to work by themselves, and that's okay too. But that's why I would say a degree doesn't show that what you can do. It just provides further reassurance to the person hiring you. That's how I would mainly convey it. But going back to your question, it took me a while to find a job, like at the time. Without a degree, I was interviewing at so many different companies. It was a pain. And ultimately, I started creating lots of draft example work. And then whenever I would apply somewhere, I would submit the example work that I was doing. So I would basically look at the kind of blog posts that the company was writing, or the kind of work they were doing, and then try to do something similar by myself to show, hey, I can do the kind of work that you require me to do within that role. And that also gives additional reassurance of like, okay, that person can actually do the work, and independent of their degree status, to put it that way. So that's kind of my suggestion. It doesn't really matter how old you are. It mainly matters how you approach getting a role or advancing within your career into certain areas. So submitting example work is always amazing. Similarly, if you want anybody to do you a favor, providing them with examples, providing them with additional context, and doing the work for them is always the best for you to get the answer that you want from them. Oh, somebody asked, can you tell us about your journey from Microsoft to Sivo? I never worked at Microsoft, but I'm flattered that you think that. No, I'm actually not interested to work any of those bigger, larger companies. It's not really my thing. I don't know why I'm not focusing. It's not really my thing to work for them. No, I don't want to work for startups anymore, which is a different story. Like I've worked for several years as a contractor, and worked for various startups in the blockchain space as a contractor. And then I worked in the DevOps space for CodeFresh, which can be considered a startup, and to medium-sized company. Like it's still, well, it's a larger company, but they kind of have the startup culture. And now I work for Sivo. So I'm a bit, I want to advance to a different kind of company where I have different kind of, where there are different kind of problems to solve, because startups, they tend to face similar problems. And after working with a few startups, it's kind of, it gets a bit old, let's say, to face those problems. Yeah, so I worked for CodeFresh for several months, and then I worked for Sivo for the past 9 months, and last week was my last day at Sivo. Now, I worked primarily at Sivo as site reliability engineer, and I found that I'm really missing the developer advocacy part within my role. And doing developer advocacy, I want it to be highly technical. I want to provide tutorials and technical content and get involved with the community as well and contribute to open source. And those are really niche roles, I would say, to have. And yeah, so I'm already have something lined up for that goes into that direction. I'm not going to say yet where and how and what and who, but that's my goal, to go full-time back into developer advocacy. I think that's where I can add the most value, and I'm not focused. Is this focusing? No. Okay, you might have to see my blurry face. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that's from me and Sivo, and it's mainly about my career path and where I think I can advance more and do my best work. And that's kind of it. Okay, so question, does one need to have knowledge of software development technology like HTML, CSS, JavaScript if interested in the DevOps field and want to pursue that? So you listed primarily front-end stack technologies, frameworks, languages that you would use on the front end. When I got started, just trying to teach myself programming, I got started just with HTML and CSS, and I built like static basic websites first with HTML and CSS, and I could never warm up to JavaScript. I did within one of my previous roles a lot of React, just to make my demos prettier, and within that role I also did a lot of TypeScript. So instead of JavaScript, I use TypeScript more heavily. And that's kind of my experience that I have within front end. Now, I haven't done any front end development since about a year ago. I used to do my own website, and I actually can show you the website. It's still available. So it's, but I don't promote it anywhere. Let me open it up. Maybe it will work. Yeah, but ultimately, you don't have to know any of those technologies if you want to go into DevOps. Now, there are obviously different focuses of like on different companies. They have different tech stacks, and especially if you want to go into site reliability engineering, SRE work, or do more, or the company integrates their DevOps people more within the development teams, then it's beneficial, I guess, if you have basic knowledge in a way of their stack, of the frameworks they're using, and kind of what you have to consider with each technology in setting up, for example, your CI/CD pipelines and so on. So it can be beneficial, I guess, but I wouldn't place the main focus like there's no this one language framework is very, very helpful in DevOps. If there's one, maybe then I would say Go as like a language. That's becoming seems to be very popular, but also like it really depends. Again, like other companies are focusing on Rust, so should you learn Go or Rust? I think it's more like about the skills and can you start those languages, or can you become comfortable and understand what kind of needs they have. Like I want to like compare DevOps kind of as like babysitting a lot of times. You're kind of babysitting the projects of the company. So I have my website open here. This used to be my website that I didn't update in ages. And that's kind of my only React experience of these are all components. And if you look, I have the source code on my GitHub. If you look at it, it's terrible. Like, I think it's like what I did is kind of like piecing together everything. Kind of, I'm not a good React developer, I think. But it was a fun experience to do this. So now let's forget about it. That's kind of it. But yeah, that's a great question. Let me read the chat. Yeah, awesome question. Thank you for asking. What else? Let me take a sip of coffee while I'm reading. Is everybody going back to work today, or what are you doing? Are there any questions that I missed? 100 Days of Kubernetes helped so many people. It will probably help me a lot too in a month or two. I have started learning DevOps tech from scratch. Thank you for this. If you're completely new to DevOps, I would suggest you to get comfortable with using containers, using Docker, using different container technologies, and then going into using Kubernetes. That would be my number one suggestion, because the first time I was using Kubernetes was also the first time I was using Docker, and I was so lost of like how to do the best out of building a container. And it took me always ages to build a Docker file, like just, I don't know, and would never work properly. So that's what I would suggest. Are there any other questions? So I'm planning to do these live streams like once a week now. That's kind of like giving myself, I guess, deadlines of like I need specific time, like set times when I'm doing these things to actually do them. And you can submit your questions beforehand or topics that you would like the stream to be on. Otherwise, I might do tutorials live where you can also like join along. Or yeah, it will really depend. So feel free to message me with a few ideas of things that you would like to see. I know that there are lots of video requests on how to get started, what to do in the DevOps space, and so on. And I'm trying to make more videos on that, but I'm also trying to make more technical tutorials. Yeah, so feel free to submit anything that you're interested in. New comments. Hi, Francesco. Thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today? Oh, some suggestions on learning Golang. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So, well, with Go, so how I learn a programming language, or how I kind of go about it, I first look for free courses on YouTube. Let me write this down, and then I can share it later with you. Excalibur. So let's do this. Let's make a plan. Okay, how to learn. Oh, why is there no text? How to learn new programming language, or like how I do it. It might not work for you because obviously like people learn differently, right? So I learn at the beginning always with YouTube videos, and then I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and sometimes I just start watching them and then they are not helpful, so I stop watching them, which is cool, and then I just look for more YouTube videos, and then I look for blog posts. Like I follow different blog articles, because with blog posts you can like, the problem is with, okay, so the difference with YouTube videos and blog posts for me is that with let me make this bigger. With YouTube videos, I can like follow along step by step, and I actually have to do what they are doing, like have to think about it. If it's a good YouTube tutorial, it's like step by step, like write this line and this is that, and write that line and this is that, and so on. With blog articles, what happens a lot of times, I think, when people follow blog articles, they don't really think about what they are doing, and they just copy paste. And obviously you want to know why you're doing what you're doing. Like with every line of code, you don't just want to copy paste the code block and just see if that works. That's something you can do later on with Stack Overflow and other things. So like if you need different parts to your code and you kind of plug and play together, then that's great. But I think at the beginning, it's really crucial to understand what is each part. For Go, there are like tons and tons of resources where you can follow along like step-by-step tutorials. And I think there are other people who are probably a lot better to ask. And I can put kind of together a list of the resources that I'm going to be using, because I have to also get better at it. New Year's resolution. Yeah. Okay, there's a cool question. Have you done any certification course? I have not. I'm partially, so half of me is kind of thinking, Anais, let's get yourself together and do a course and do the certification. You can do it. And they are amazing certifications, and I think some of them are very valuable. What I don't like, and this is going to be super honest talk, and people are going to hate me for this because people are making money off this advice. So what I do not like at all is people making money out of teaching you courses that will get you certified. Whether those are individual boot camps or those are courses to get a certification. And their business model relies on telling you, as many people as possible, that you need a certification because that's how they make their money, right? And that's not the idea, right? Like you shouldn't have to buy into courses to get a certification. If you need to get a course in order to learn what's needed for a certification, then it's probably, like from my perspective, it's not worth it. Like that's a form of gatekeeping, like keeping the information away from you. That's a form of gatekeeping. Like the information should be freely accessible in different formats. Like I get it that courses, they have a more structure, and that's great. But ultimately, if the same information is not available freely on like free online, then that's a form of gatekeeping to me. And similarly, paying like lots and lots of money for a certification is also a form of gatekeeping to me. And there are lots of organizations and other things that lower the barrier of like you get discounts and other things. For example, if you attend KubeCon, you get discounts usually on like their certifications, which is amazing. But there are some certificates where you have to pay thousands for. And I just think that that's something which just differentiates then like who has money to pay for it and who hasn't ultimately. And I don't think that really proves you the skills. Now, there are opposing opinions, and I get that. And that's not all that I'm thinking about certificates. I think it's a great way to show what you've learned, especially if you don't have the work experience. Now, I don't think that all the trust should be based on certificates. Like there are lots of people I know, like Carl and other people, especially from the Azure community, and I think their certificates, like you know that they kind of know what they're talking about when they talk about Azure, versus I don't really do that. Yeah, let me read those comments. Carl says, I prefer certificates where we don't have to purchase their course. Like Microsoft exams have Microsoft Learn and community resources. That's the thing, though. With those large organizations like Microsoft, you have all those resources available for free, right? And with a lot of times when you pay for the certificate, you also have to pay for somebody moderating that exam, right? Like you're basically paying that somebody is making sure that you don't cheat and it's a credible certificate, right? And I just think that information should be available for free, and people shouldn't make you feel like they are not and you have to pay for them. That's the main thing. And yeah, Microsoft Learn is an amazing resource. There are lots of different companies that attract users by providing free online learning resources. So if you want to learn about something, like for example, cloud native security, then look at companies that are operating within the security field, because they will have free learning resources usually available for you, which is a lot cheaper than paying for courses. What else? Feel free to share. Are you able to share links in the chat? Like, feel free to share links if you have them. Otherwise, I'm going to go through the chat later and just look for links that kind of reflect what you tell me. And then we see how that goes. Also, if you want any resources highlighted in my weekly DevOps newsletter, then please do join the community. Let me share this with you. So here, the latest edition. I did a kind of winter break, but here's the latest edition of my newsletter. Now, I also post on Twitter before I now publish newsletters of like, you can submit links, like this could be your content or just content that you found useful throughout the week. And I will put that in my newsletter, because ultimately this newsletter is supposed to be a curated list of content from across the space, from various different people, different communities. It shouldn't be just like, there's one section, the sticky content, which is usually like stuff that I've been working on. And then you have a nice meme at the end, which always makes my day. But yeah, so this is that. So feel free to submit it. Also, if you want to join the community, you just go to 100daysofkubernetes.io and you put a community beforehand. And then you can join the Discord community chat, and you can also submit content there. Like, this is the Discord community chat. Here, as you can see, there are some really nice groups, such as the Eddie Hub. And I wanted to share this video. So for example, Kunal here, he shared his first YouTube video in the chat, in the community. So I'm going to put that in my next newsletter, because that's how I found about this video. And you're going to see what kind of stuff I'm watching. I got addicted to cooking videos lately. Just if you're wondering what kind of videos I watch on YouTube, cooking videos, random videos. Okay, what else? Newsletter, awesome. I'm glad you like it. So feel free to contribute. Also, if you have ideas for the newsletter, feel free to send them to me. I would love to hear them. 90 days of DevOps. Is there something like, when did 90 days of, I can show too. I forgot I can show you messages. Yeah, Michael, I saw you started doing 90 days of DevOps, and I wondered where this is coming from. Like, what did I miss? I feel like I missed something in the past weeks. Where is this from? You should join me sometime. That might be fun to talk about these things live. It feels a bit lonely if I'm just talking to myself to a camera. So if you want to join me in these kind of conversations, please do let me know. I would love to have a guest host every week. And then you can just have a chat with me and go through the comments and talk about things and drink some coffee or tea or juice, whatever you prefer. Oh my God, there's so many comments. Okay, what else do I miss? How to attract job interviews. How can we convey we have the skills to the employer? So I talked about that a little bit at the beginning. Here's the comment. Thank you for asking. I think submitting example work to every application is a must do if you really want a job. It shows that you really want to have the job. And I think that's very valuable. Similarly, putting your content, like your tutorials, your examples, everything that you kind of work on, putting that on, I'm still sharing my screen, putting that on GitHub, that would be amazing. So for example, in the 100 Days repository over here, I hope you can see that. Why is there an overlay? There's a kind of a glitch between, I don't know, you still see like the ex-colleague draft thing, and then you see the other one. This is so weird. Okay, I hope you can see this. Anyways, so within the 100 Days of Kubernetes repository, we have the 100 Days of Kubernetes journey. So you go to the 100 Days of Kubernetes journey, and this is not sharing my screen properly, so it's a bit weird. Oh, do you see what this does to the logo? Is it just me? Like, there's something weird going on. Anyway, you have like here for each day, you have an example folder, and you can just fill out each day with what have you done? What are the prerequisites to doing that? Use case, your research, try yourself with an example. So if you, for example, fill out these kind of things, so like do you do something similar on your GitHub, then that's really valuable to see for somebody who you want to work for, right? Because they see kind of the stuff that you've already done. Also, there are lots and lots of different communities that you can get involved with. So that's just, yeah, that's how I would go about showing your example work. So what else? So Michael says, that's a good comment. DevOps is full of all areas, as you know. So I want to take the first 90 days of 2022, 1st January to 31st of March, 90 days. We'll go through 12 to 13 different topics to get foundation knowledge. That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, that's basically what 90 days of DevOps is about. So maybe, Michael, you can do something similar and share with people how they can do it as well. You can just change the name. I don't know. It's probably a lot of work. You put it on your blog. So check out Michael's blog if you're curious about 90 days of DevOps, because he's showing you how he's doing it. So that's amazing. If you're curious. What else? Oh, there's a new comment that I kind of addressed earlier. So yes, I'm leaving Sivo. I didn't announce yet which company I'm joining next. I'm looking forward to contributing more to open source and staying in the field of cloud native. That's all for now that I'm sharing. Yeah, so taking this month off though, to recharge and do lots of these live streams and produce more video content. And I feel like there's lots of stuff that I've missed in this chat. Just going through that. Let me know if there's any question that I haven't really addressed, or if you want to share anything or anything I could look at, or maybe I should do one of these things of like looking at example projects and giving my thoughts or something, like reacting to example projects. I don't know, that might be fun. Or like reacting to serious, but reacting to what? 7 days will focus on networking from 90 days of DevOps. Networking is like the topic that I struggle with the most. And I chose to do my final year university project on Kubernetes networking. And I'm terrified of my own decision, but we'll see how that goes. I think a video on project ideas. Oh, for someone who's just starting out. Oh, that's actually an amazing idea, because so when I got started with like teaching myself to program, and it's again not focusing on my face, when I started to teach myself how to program, I mean, you're never really done with that one. There are lots of sites that provide you with example projects that you can do. Like they usually take like just 1 or 2 hours or 3 hours in the best case scenarios. And I will look them up. There are like lots of these different sites, and you have like basically 50 different example projects, and would be like some of the sites give you the example solution, but others just give you the problem. So it might be really cool to set that up and then collect the projects that people do in like one place. That could be something that we could add to 100 days, actually, if you're curious, Kunal, to collaborate on that. It would be nice if we could have like a section with like example projects, and then we just list we detail basically as description of like short description of like example problems of like, this is a problem, solve it, or like you have to do X, or like you're in the scenario working for this company and you have to figure out how to do X, Y, Z. And then we add to it the different example projects that people are doing based on that problem. That might be so cool. If anybody wants to collaborate, reach out to me. That would be really cool. Anyway, hide current comment. Can you share the community link? I guess I can. Ooh. Let me know if this link works. I never know how Discord works. Let me know if the link to the Discord works. Otherwise, it's just literally community.100DaysOfKubernetes. That's how you can join the Discord community. And I'm also planning to be more active on the Discord community and contribute more. What is your experience of your new MacBook Pro? I talked about it in the beginning as well. I shared a really funny story about my travel and not knowing how to turn off an iPhone. So watch the beginning of this live if you're curious about this. Yeah. So what's your experience of the new MacBook Pro? That is the question. With M1. With your technical work. So far, everything seems to work. It's a computer, and it does what computers are supposed to do these days. So I'm really happy about that. What else? I don't know, like more specific questions. I don't know how people talk about their laptops usually. I should watch some of these YouTube video reviews of people showcasing, like, this is my experience with a MacBook Pro and things like that. But my experience, everything works so far. There were some issues, but then the new updates to the software kind of fixed them. Like, for example, my trackpad, you call this trackpad, right? It didn't really work. Like, it wouldn't click on anything at some point, which got fixed. What else? It kind of hung itself up sometimes, which also got fixed. And other than that, it's working. It's working now. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, please do help me with example projects, example problems. That might be so cool. Also, if you could ask companies to submit example problems. Oh, this is turning into a super brainstorming session here. Can you share your home office productivity setup? I love to hear. Are you a DevOps engineer? Well, my productivity setup, I have some notebook that I'm never using. It's basically blank because I thought, like, hey, maybe I will start using it. And now I just put like my glasses on top to not affect my table. So that's part of my productivity system. I have always a cold cup of coffee. Why is it cold, you might ask? Because I drink my coffee so slow that it just gets cold really quickly. And then what I found actually is that one screen that's not too big helps me to stay focused better than if I have multiple screens. I used to have two screens of the same size next to each other. And it's kind of because I used to have an internship where I had two screens where that was the case, and you have them next to each other and you focus, like you sit in the middle like this, you sit in the middle and you have your two screens, right? And I think it worked very well, but because you could have multiple things open at the same time, I got really easily distracted. So one screen actually helps me a lot. What else? If you don't think I'm funny, that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Here's a supporter. It's just, I always tell myself I'm going to be so productive writing things down, and then I never do it. I just never do it. What else? What else can I talk about? Did I answer all the questions related to Sivo and my plans for 100 Days of Kubernetes and things like that? I'm actually looking forward to trying out what's new. If something is new with the Azure Kubernetes service or DigitalOcean. I don't know if Linode has a hosted Kubernetes service, but that might be interesting to expand my horizon. Let's hide this comment. Cool. What else? Ooh. Okay. So I don't know what else to talk about. This was really fun. Feel free to submit any questions. Also, feel free to always reach out on Twitter. My DMs are open. I kind of sometimes skip through them. And sometimes I'm reading your comments, but I'm actually not necessarily replying because I'm planning a video to kind of as a reply to provide my thoughts, because you might have a similar question to a lot of other people or something like that. Kunal has a question. How was your experience being an SRE? What are some of the main roles and things that one does being an SRE? So I could probably do not have a complete video on that, and I'm also not necessarily the most reliable resource. I really enjoyed working at Sivo and the team that I was working at. I was working under Alex Jones was my manager there, and he has lots of experience. He has tons of experience being an SRE and leading SRE teams. So that was an amazing learning opportunity for me. What I did mainly, like at the beginning, I was really mainly setting up infrastructure through Helm charts and Terraform. Like I spent days and days configuring different Helm charts. What else? We did some Go projects, some reporting projects, and things to like automate some tasks. We also did the Sivo crossplane provider. So we did some very cool projects. So I got some experience in that as well. Yeah, it was fun. Some days were spent just working on customer clusters, making sure everything is working across the different regions. It was great. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed working as an SRE, and that's definitely something that I would get back to in the future, move forward to in the future. What I've experienced though is that I lack a lot of the foundational technical knowledge. Like for example, I've never done sysadmin tasks, so I struggle with that sometimes, like really figuring, like going into a service and really figuring out what's going wrong there. I struggled with those kind of manual tasks where you have to know the specific commands and how to debug things that are running live. That was kind of my main struggle. What else? So those are like some things where I realized that I lack some of the technical knowledge. So this year is also going to be focused for me to really get back to studying more and studying more. It sounds like it probably seems like I'm studying a lot, but a lot of the things I've been doing were mainly for my YouTube videos versus it's different. The stuff you learn for YouTube videos or to make tutorials versus the stuff like when you actually want to learn something by heart. And I think that's something that I'm kind of missing, to really get into something and have that feeling of flow of like, I'm just immersing myself. Can you say that in English? In the learning experience. I'm romanticizing learning. Have you tried hosting your own Kubernetes cluster in a home lab like setup? That's planned. I've kind of experimented around a little bit, just putting Kubernetes on a Raspberry Pi and things like that, but I've not really done much with it. But it's also I'm gonna have to do it for my final year university project. So I'm gonna build like a multi-node Raspberry Pi cluster, and gonna set everything up on that. So far the plan, and then lots of networking with that. So we'll see how that project goes. Okay, this is a nice comment. So how to start prepping for remote work? Realistically, how much time would it take to make a good quantity of quality contributions to become credible for a beginner level? Well, it really depends on you. So also the thing is, like, I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm publishing later a blog post and a YouTube video where I talk more about how I would suggest people to get started with different topics, how I think about kind of my career and how I figure out my next career move. That's all in a blog post, like the kind of questions I'm asking myself and how I approach these very difficult life questions, right? And the thing is, with something like, you're asking two questions: remote work, and then how to build up your skills to a level that gives you credibility. And for example, when I got started in the DevOps space, I didn't know Kubernetes, I didn't know Docker, I haven't used any of it before. However, up to that point, I already worked for quite a long time as developer advocate. So I had the developer advocate skills, I had the technical writing skills and the documentation skills and some public speaking skills. And those were skills that were transferable from my previous job experiences to the DevOps space. And if I would have just gotten started in DevOps in a completely new role that wasn't developer advocacy related, I probably would have struggled a lot, because ultimately transitioning from one developer advocacy position into a different one in a different industry is a lot easier than, being a painter and then wanting to become a pilot, right? Like, what skills can you transfer between those two roles? So you always want to, or like I always tell people, look at what you can transfer between, like what kind of skills you can transfer. So I wrote this blog post before I made the decision to go into DevOps, or like to accept a new role. And it was written in 2020. And we have 2022. Anyway, that was funny. So why I don't follow my passion, and I basically write about, it's based on a book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, which is also by Cal Newport, the second book that I'm quoting today from him. And it basically talks about what's the difference between following your passion approach versus building craftsmanship. And building craftsmanship is basically building a skill set, like a solid skill set. And the book is very good, I think. And I would suggest people to read it if you want to figure out your next career moves. It's a really good book that kind of guides your thoughts in some way of like how to think about building your career. I like it. You might not like it. So I would still quote this blog post, to be honest. But ultimately, I don't think that there's like a one thing of how to get started. Or how to get your first job, your first role. Awesome. We are like 1 hour in. Whew. Yeah, if anybody wants to kind of co-host with me for one of these live streams, do let me know. I would love to have a co-host, maybe a changing co-host every week. That might be fun. Should just go over different topics, have a conversation. Not like an interview. I don't like to interview people, to be honest. Not that I am not interested, but the thing is, once you interview somebody on a live stream, the conversation becomes about them. And I'm trying to make these live streams about the people watching, right? So if you have any questions, I want to address those questions. And if somebody is co-hosting, then you have like two perspectives, right? Like right now, I'm only providing my perspective. But if you have two people co-hosting, and answering questions on a topic, then you have two perspectives on that topic, which is a lot more valuable than if I'm just blah, 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 talking to myself, kind of, or to you. That's kind of the plan for these. So I'm planning to have them on a weekly basis. Now, I answered lots of these questions. I think that some questions came up multiple times. So do watch the recording if you're curious about some of these questions, like why leaving Sivo, what's next with my career, what's next with 100 Days of Kubernetes, generally, what's happening next? What's happening next with you all? Thank you for the DevOps diary, but there are a lot of people willing to study, but with the lack of information on how to do it. That's a huge problem. It's also, one part is that there's not the right information available, and the other part is that the information is not accessible. And kind of having a combination of accessible and available information is quite difficult. Like lots of companies, they have information available, but not accessible to people. And that kind of becomes a problem. Anyway, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I think this is it for this week. I really hope to see you next week. If there's another time that would work better for you, please do let me know. If I have multiple people requesting an earlier time or a later time, I will cater to that. So that would be great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have an amazing day. And check out my YouTube video that I mentioned a few times that I'm going to publish later on. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. All the best. All the best in your 2022. Have a great start and take it easy and take care of yourself. That's, I think, the most important part. Take care of yourself. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Bye.